Two schools that were involved in the first of the 5 cases that were appealed to the Supreme Court that were involved in the wider Brown v. Board decision to desegregate schools nationwide. So these 2 schools were involved in Briggs v. Elliott, which took place in Clarendon County, South Carolina. One of these is a school for white children, and one of them is a school for black children. Can you guess which is which?
I think those are black people.
No,
Nope.
You got it backwards.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's a really big size disparity between these two. Liberty Hill Colored School was only 2 rooms, whereas Somerton Graded School, which was for white children, was a full 2 levels.
Wow.
They were also made of really different materials. Yeah, so Liberty Hill Colored School was made of plywood and tar paper, and Somerton Graded School was made of brick and white marble. So.
My question is, was it smaller because of the amount of people that were there?
No, there was actually a pretty high population of black students in Clarendon County, but they were not given anywhere near the same amount of resources. In fact, even though there were far more of them, they actually spent way less on black students than they did on white students. You can see here that also the black students were of varying grade levels being taught in this one school, and they only had one teacher who was also their reverend and their principal. They didn't have any kind of plumbing, they didn't have electricity, which the white school had both, and the white school was of course just, elementary school. They didn't, go across grade levels like that. These are 2 pictures of the schools from the same year, 1948. But
Are they just like displayed here? Are they down the street from each other, or
No, this one was in the city area, but this was in like the rural area.
This is here.
No, this is in South Carolina.
Oh, South Carolina. Oh, my mistake.
One of the 5 cases of Brown Board of Education was titled Briggs v. Elliott, and it took place in Clarendon County, South Carolina.
And it actually, the distance of the schools was one of the major problems. Students had to walk 5 miles to and 5, was it miles?
You're correct. More than 5 miles to school and more than 5 miles back home.
They weren't provided buses by the county, even though they asked for them. So the parents actually got together to buy a rundown bus for their students. And when they asked for gas from the county, they were not given that either. But the lack of transportation and the fact that students had to go to a school that was so far away when there was a school so close to where they lived was one of the big things that they filed a suit for, because it was just patently unequal. Over here we have 2 schools from Kansas. Kansas was one of the few states that actually genuinely was separate but equal. So on the table we have models of a white school and a black school here in Kansas. These were designed by the same architect using the same materials. This school is a couple thousand feet smaller than this one. It has these pretty arches, or not arches, columns outside. This one does not have an auditorium, but this one does. And the teachers at this school usually had master's degrees, and most of the students at this school had associate's or bachelor's degrees. Can you guess which one was a school for white children and which one was a school for black children?
No, they both look pretty nice, but I'm gonna guess the Pillars because it's colonial for white people.
You're correct. Yeah, so this is Monroe Elementary School. That's actually the school that you're standing in right now. And it was a segregated school for black children, and Randolph Elementary was for white children. On the wall we have pictures of the 2 schools from 1949. You can see that, in terms of like the facilities, they're pretty equal. They have desks, they have books, they both have teachers. This woman up here was the teacher for this school. For this class, she actually had a master's degree. So she made more money than the white teacher down here because Kansas paid teachers based off of their highest degree level.
Cool.
But despite the fact that this was actually, a real example of separate but equal, the school was still involved in the Brown v. Board Supreme Court case and was used as an example of why segregation was harmful to the mental development of children. And through the galleries, you will find your answers as to why. I want you to search around for those. You can find the answers in the auditorium here, which has a 25-minute film that's on loop in 5-minute segments. If you don't want to watch those, you don't have time, you can start at the Road to Brown, which begins over there by the boiler room. And it goes over the Brown decision. And there you'll also find the answers to the question of how Brown v. Board proved that segregation was harmful. And then over here we have the legacy of Brown, which goes over the civil rights movement post Brown v. Board decision. And then at the very end of the hall, we have the kindergarten room, which is set up to be accurate to the time back when the school was segregated.
Awesome. So just walk around and upstairs is off limits, I presume?
Yes, upstairs.
Opportunities in employment, he'd probably been working for DuPont, making 10 times as much money, but that's what was available to him.
Our teachers were devoted to us and to see that we would learn. If I was having trouble in math, the math teacher would have me come to her house on Saturdays, so she could tune me.
And our teachers were very positive, very learned people, and they, for the most part, they were the most good trained.
National AXO competition here in this beautiful land of Houston, Texas.
One of the teachers who don't have it in American ministers like we They do so through a Saturday morning mentoring program called AXO, sponsored by the NAACP. This program fosters respect for education among African American youngsters.
Are you still thinking about watercolor, or what are you thinking about these video? What are you thinking about that?
AXO mentors help high school students develop competitive projects in the arts, sciences, and humanities.
Gray. And then you took technique.
The mentoring is very important. Our youngsters need an atmosphere in which they can thrive and that they can develop.
So for next week, if you feel like you some things to be willing to read someone else to film some things so you're getting a feel for the reading. That's what we're really working on next week is reading.
I created AXO out of the sum of the Black experience, of the encouragement that African Americans once gave each other when they had nowhere else to go.
The title of our project is Determining the Sensitivity of Technetium Laminate Atom Sesame for patients who seem happy.
Jason Evans is only one of hundreds competing in the national finals of the AXO program. Students from every region of the nation prepare detailed projects in the sciences, humanities, and the arts.
This is a fantastic thing that we're trying to do with these kids today, to reorient them back into contribute so much to our lives. How Black people survived all the deprivations and the shortcomings and during the segregated period.
My name is Rick Ford. I'm 17 years old. I saw the problem at current implants on the rest of the body, so if you could something that was biocompatible, it would work. So I experimented with 8 different polymers, and I found that something in polystyrene works.
We got to go back in the middle of this climate to making it possible for me to get an education and to dream.
Hi, I'm Renzo Champagne. I'm from the Division of Blood Accidents, and I'm fortunate to I'm making justice.
Math has been my forte, and as I go throughout college, I will take courses in math, but I'm going to study medicine in the long run.
I think I was probably blessed to have the experience and the exposure of having teachers who were dedicated and devoted and willing to have us come out of here with strength and so forth. I'd say 80% of the people who graduate from high school with me were in college.
You have to become
All activities were segregated.
the usual categories assigned to blacks. A scientist has a right to be a hero. A poet has a right to be a hero. A thinker, a philosopher has a right to be a hero, just as much as an athlete or an entertainer.
For those of us who lived in the segregated society, education was everything. We believed that education was the only way to get around discrimination.
My mother understood this. She was a maid. She did housework. And she did not want her daughter to have to put up with this sort of thing, scrub people's floors or whatever.
It almost seems like a cliche when you talk about dreaming of an education when there are bigger dreams out there, bigger things you want to do. and bigger things to talk about. But we basically knew that this was the beginning. This is where one had to be able to function and to excel.
We saw no other way. So education was the be-all, end-all. We had to have it. If you didn't have it, you were both black and uneducated. That was the worst thing in the world to be.
Most of the 4 million people freed from slavery at the end of the Civil War were illiterate. Only a few had defied the law and learned to read and write.
We have slavery, we have the war, and we get freed. There's this pent-up demand to learn how to read. And if you know how to read, you have a moral obligation to reach back and help me.
During Reconstruction, help came from Northern charities that built agricultural and technical schools throughout the South. In time, these schools became full-fledged universities. But segregation limited job opportunities for African American graduates with advanced degrees. Most of them wound up teaching at primary and secondary schools.
My science teacher was a PhD in physics and chemistry. The poor guy was teaching high school. If they had opportunities in employment, he would probably been working for DuPont, making 10 times as much money, but that's what was available to him.
Our teachers were devoted to us and to see that we would learn. If I was having trouble in math, the math teacher would have me come to her house on Saturdays so she could tutor me.
But our teachers were very positive, very learned people, and they, for the most part, drove us. They gave us good dreams.
Let me welcome you to the 25th National AXO competition here in this beautiful land of Houston, Texas.
Barbara Richards is one of hundreds of teachers who help African American youngsters like these realize their dreams. They do so through a Saturday morning mentoring program called AXO. Sponsored by the NAACP, this program fosters respect for education among African American youngsters.
Are you still thinking about watercolor, or what are you thinking about mixed media? What are you thinking about doing?
Right now. What color? I don't think.
AXO mentors help high school students develop competitive projects in the arts, sciences, and humanities.
Kind of blue-gray, and then you took pen and ink and you
The
began to...
mentoring is very important. Our youngsters need an atmosphere in which they can thrive and that they can develop.
So, for next week, if you ever feel like reading one of your own poems, please be willing to read someone else's poem, something, just so you're getting a feel for the reading. That's what we're really working on next week, is reading.
I created AXO out of the song of the Black experience, of the encouragement that African Americans once gave each other when they had nowhere else to go.
The title of my project is Determining the Sensitivity of Technetium 99M Sestamibi. When patients are seen having...
Jason Atkins is only one of hundreds of students competing in the national finals of the AXO program. Students from every region of the nation prepare detailed projects in the sciences, humanities, and the arts.
This is a fantastic thing that we're trying to do with these kids today, to reorient them back into what contributed so much to our lives. How black people survived all the deprivations and shortcomings and exclusionist activity during the segregated period.
My name is Brooke Ford. I'm 17 years old. I saw the problem at current implants only last about 10 years, so if you could coat it with something that was biocompatible, then it would work. So I experimented with 8 different polymers, and I found that sulfonated polystyrene works.
We got to go back in the middle of this climate of racism and do what made it possible for me to get an education and to dream.
Hi, I'm Reginald Champagne. I'm from the DuPage County, Illinois AXO branch, and this is my 4th year in AXO. I made a Navabot. My Navabot is sensing where the line is, making adjustments as necessary.
Yeah, I love math, and math has been my forte in high school. And as I go throughout college, I will take courses in math, but I'm gonna study medicine in the long run.
I think I was probably blessed to have had the experience and the exposure of having teachers who were dedicated and devoted and wanted to have us come out of there with strength and so forth. I'd say 80% of the people who graduated from high school with me went to college.
You have to become heroic in something other than the usual categories assigned to blacks. A scientist has a right to be a hero. A poet has a right to be a hero. A thinker, a philosopher has a right to be a hero just as much as an athlete or an entertainer.
Discrimination. My mother understood this. She was a maid, she did housework, and she did not want her daughter to have to put up with this sort of thing, scrub people's floors or whatever.
It almost seems like a cliche when you talk about dreaming of an education, that there are bigger dreams out there, bigger things you want to do, and bigger things you talk about. But we basically knew that this was the beginning. This is where one had to be able to function and to excel.
Children of it!
It's okay.
Blacks migrated to Kansas in the hope of freedom and to escape the injustices of the South.
No other state was recruiting African Americans specifically saying you could own land, you have freedom of association without that badge of segregation.
Many African Americans settled in Topeka, a modest Midwestern city and capital of the state of Kansas.
When the influx started to increase, even open-minded, if you will, Kansans decided, well, wait a minute.
Kansas did not have mandated segregation. They had what is called as permissive segregation.
Although not required, segregation was permitted by law in elementary schools in large cities. In Topeka, African American children from kindergarten through 8th grade had to attend one of 4 schools in the city.
Black children were required to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to catch a bus, go clear across town. Then they had to walk across heavily trafficked streets.
My children had to go past 1 or 2 schools in order to get to McKinley on the west side.
In 1948, the local NAACP president, McKinley Burnett, started to petition the Topeka School Board to desegregate the schools.
McKinley Burnett took this challenge on alone initially.
People didn't seem to care. They were happy, go lucky. They didn't seem to think too much was wrong.
Even among the members of the NAACP, there were only just a few members who were advocating the cause of integration.
When the school board refused to grant Burnett's request, local attorneys Charles Scott Sr., John Scott, and Charles Bledsoe began to organize a legal challenge with the help of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund.
They recognized that if things were going to change, they had to do it.
Unlike other school desegregation lawsuits, the schools for African Americans in Topeka were in relatively good condition and provided excellent teachers. The lawyers looked for another way to prove the harmful effects of segregation.
They pursued the theory that segregation was psychologically detrimental to blacks, children, and that it impaired their ability and even their desire to learn.
Although public schools were the battlefront, society was the target. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund recognized that if we succeed in this one step, people that understood the law would recognize that these other parts of Jim Crow would have to fall away.
McKinley Burnett and the lawyers scrambled to find plaintiffs.
He had a hard time getting people to use their name.
I think there was a reluctance to really want to stand up because they recognized what was at stake. Fortunately for us, there were the few that didn't face those types of challenges.
I came from a locality in western Kansas where we had integration. And when I got to Topeka, I was quite surprised that Topeka was segregated.
12 women, mostly housewives, agreed to be plaintiffs. They were committed to their children's education and the least vulnerable to financial pressure.
So I thought it was so unfair. And I was ready to help correct the situation.
Oliver Brown, the only male plaintiff, was a shop welder for the Santa Fe Railroad and an aspiring minister.
I think it was all about finding some way to be taken seriously. My father didn't want to be marginalized. My father simply stood up with the group. He was willing to be part of the numbers to be counted.
Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka was filed on February 28, 1951.
The U.S. District Court in Topeka found that segregation did have a psychologically detrimental impact upon black children. but they were bound by the precedent in Plessy v. Ferguson and was obliged to uphold segregation.
Judge Walter Huxman ruled the way he believed he should based on the laws on the books, but he knew, and I think that's why he wrote his opinion as he did, leaving the door open for the next level of judicial review.
After Brown versus Board of Education was collectively argued with 4 other lawsuits at the U.S. Supreme Court, the justices unanimously overturned Plessy versus Ferguson and outlawed segregation in the public schools.
When the court decided, people were extremely joyful because even though they recognized the challenges ahead, they had something to be happy about.
Did you have a question? No, bathroom?
Not indoors. But segregation was not about buildings and books. It was about who we were and what we could hope for. It was so bad that a beautiful little black girl would tell me that her white doll was prettier than life, and nicer, and smart.
We're going to insist on non-segregation in American public education from top to bottom, from law school to kindergarten.
Is this the same mural that's located outside?
No, this is the same mural there. We found that piece in one of the closets upstairs and decided to display it down here. But this is like a rendition of the original mural that's outside.
Mm.
Back in the civil rights movement, the dream was basically just for black people to have the same rights as white people did, but on paper. I think now it transcends that because we have it on paper, but we don't have it up here. belong to a generation that consumed race, depending upon
better education, less poverty.
Yeah, so it's not. I believe it's not.
Things aren't
Getting motivation to make your own path to be successful.
There's no reason.
They went like viral pretty fast. We got recognition from our tribe. We got to go to Washington, D.C. In a small way, I think this video project has helped to motivate people and help them want to go and get an education and get a better job. That help other people do the same thing that they've done.
He goes from awareness to embracing others. Connecting.
Care about being fair. It's especially important to include people who might seem a little different from you.
Sometimes that feels scary.
I know it does, but sometimes being fair means you have to be brave and be a leader. Here's the thing. If you don't include people who are different from you, if you don't invite them to join in, then you're saying to them, you're not good enough to play with us.
And then they'll feel sad and mad and afraid.
That's right.
I'll bet that's how those kids felt when they couldn't go to school with their friends.
There is fair.
There is fair. About being fair. Invite, be polite. Can I count on you to do what's right? There is fair.
There's another thing you can do to show you care about being fair, and that is be polite.
Like saying please.
Please and thank you are a great start. Nice words like please and thank you are a way you can show kindness and respect for other people. When you use nice words, you show you care about being fair.
But sometimes people use words that aren't so nice. In fact, they're really mean.
Unfortunately, that's true. Teasing or calling people names can really hurt people's feelings.
And that's not fair.
It certainly isn't.
Do people call African American kids mean names?
It's really sad that African American kids get different reasons for using very mean names. I'm sure they did. But here's something I want you to remember. The Supreme Court and the people of the United States believe everyone should be treated fairly. That's why we have a national park that celebrates it. This park goes to show that we care about being fair. So we're asking you to sing along with me now.
Okie dokie. That is Monroe Elementary School here in Topeka, Kansas. This is Brown versus Board of Education. Was involved in it. It's a national park. Man, walking through this grass is a lot of work. But anyways, I came, I saw, I conquered. A great interior. School, of course, is dated to its time. A lot of modernization. But yep, this is it. This is a parking lot. That is a mural. Two geese. Monroe Elementary used to be segregated. And then one of the pictures says that this is like a, I don't know if I want to call it induction, but they get the cold and the hot out of here. So when it's cold, I guess the earth temperature will warm up the pipes, and then vice versa. Maintain a regular temperature. And I didn't see that. It looks like a smokestack, but I know there's a boiler room, so I don't know. Maybe it is what it is. I did see the chimney that was in the kindergarten, what would be the backside of that building, or the building. But anyways, here we go. The Kansas African American History Trail. I think that's a new posting. I don't remember that being there. See, from Brown versus Board, the Topeka Civil Rights Story. Explore Topeka's struggle for the freedom and equality from John Brown to Brown versus Board of Education decision. Take a brochure for additional information, which includes a map of the self-guided tour. Here are the opening hours. And I'll leave you with that. Pause it if you want to read it. And thanks for watching.